Hi and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of June 29, 2020. First, let's do a really quick prediction recap for the previous week, the week of June 22nd. I predicted for the market directions that the first 3 days, Monday through Wednesday, would be up, and Thursday and Friday market would go down. And I was correct 3 out of 5 days. Market actually went down on Wednesday, and then it reverted to up on Thursday before we had a really large drop on Friday. So 2 days had switched directions, I guess, Wednesday and Thursday. Let's see, in terms of the background predictions, we have some going transits, Saturn conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and that has been in place in 2019, will remain in place through the end of this year, and it's usually associated with major geopolitical changes, seismic activity like major disasters and really large shifts in power and leadership and restructuring of governments and large corporations. For the last week, I predicted peak activity for the 25th and 26th of June. We do have some ongoing, of course, geopolitical instability. We have some tensions between China and India, and particularly last week, India, following the clashes that occurred earlier this month on the border, India blocked some of the US products that are made in China. That actually happened on 26th of June. And then they also banned dozens of Chinese apps, including, I guess, very popular TikTok. In terms of the leadership changes, I guess this is ongoing influence. I guess I did see some headlines about preliminary results, I guess, of voting about changes in constitution in Russia, indicating that most voters were in favor of changes that would potentially grant Putin, I guess, a new free lease, not free lease, but basically he could, I guess, qualify for running for president for some more years if that goes through. So that, I guess, is a fairly major change. In terms of the earthquakes, we did have quite a few, magnitude, I guess, 5 and over, including the large 7.4 in Mexico and some other significant ones in China, Idaho, Turkey, and Japan. In terms of the leaders who were in power for a long time and stepping away, I didn't hear about any governmental leaders necessarily stepping away. There was news about the Wirecard, I guess, scandal, a German-based fintech company, which this news ties also with the prediction that I made about global kind of a period of June 15th through July 10th, especially June 28th and 30th, through 30th rather, having increased probability of seeing news about any sort of hidden activities, underground activities, secretive activities, spying, hacking, any of these kind of basically fraudulent activities and/or activities that happen underground. And basically, the news came out that, and I think it started, the news started trickling around the 19th of June. Basically, that the CEO that I forget already how long he was a CEO, but at least 15 years, if not 20, Marcus Brown, a billionaire CEO, had resigned. Subsequently, he was arrested on 23rd of June, and basically the Ernst & Young accounting company had discovered that there was a fraud of about 2 billion euros that were claiming to have on their balance sheet, and they didn't. And subsequently then on the 25th, I guess, of June, Wirecard filed for bankruptcy. So I guess the situation is still developing, but we did have this person who was both powerful and, of course, wealthy, had to step down in this kind of unsavory, manner or other under these unsavory circumstances. And we have this fraudulent activity going on, which, again, like a global large-scale fraud must have been going on. And with the aspects that are occurring right now, like I said, the probability of similar events will continue through about July 10th of this year, and then will pick back up around November 4th through the 20th, especially November 11th and 13th. So this will either be related to events that are happening right now, or like a follow-up, some conclusion, maybe there's a trial and that there's a verdict, and or a new set of developments. Similarly, we had news about Microsoft closing their physical retail store locations, and this too kind of relates to this I wouldn't say necessarily underground activities or secretive activities, but rather sort of a sweeping change that is made on the large global scale, because this aspect that we have right now that's transiting is the Pluto and Jupiter that are conjunct, and it has to do with, like, as I mentioned before, like either laws being drastically changed or things that were hidden now are becoming so large that they can no longer be hidden. And they basically need to be, they're becoming, noticed and resulting in various scandals or things, just now need to be regulated, finally, officially through, Jupiter being the law. But at the same time, also, Jupiter has to do with things that are international, and Pluto will either cancel things internationally or switch things, basically, again, either the borders between the countries, or in terms of like businesses, what their strategy is for overseas or international relations, things may dramatically change. And so how it applies to Microsoft, I think it has to do with, like, again, the sweeping changes that may be undertaken by large companies, and that may go perhaps overboard and be truly sweeping to the point that, everything must go. Or we are completely going to take, this office from this location and move it completely to a different location. Obviously, most likely, not hiring somebody, in one place and maybe hiring them somewhere else. And again, international kind of a change of drastic manner. So even though obviously the stores that were closed, physical locations, I think they're all in the US, but I don't know what happens to those employees. But it does qualify basically as this large sweeping change that affects large numbers of people and also affects sort of strategy of certain companies in terms of their overseas locations, or perhaps hiring overseas or not hiring overseas, or changing the laws about who is an employee, who is not, etc. And so we may see through a bit, like I said, the July 10th of this year, there may be more such large changes where maybe some locations are closed, like retail locations, or some changes made in like a social media platform, for example, or related to like cars or anything that basically relates to transportation. Maybe some, like I said, some radical changes may be made. And also this will pick back up in November of this year, and or there will be repercussions in November of this year. And this may or may not involve the actual scandal, fraud, or underground locations, but it might specifically also involve retail, communication, transportation, and like mining, nuclear power, recycling, and storage, I guess underground storage, for example. Anything is like hidden out of sight. Or I guess finance, but finance specifically focused on like loans and or, financial fraud, in fact, as well. Where basically it's not clear, I guess, who owns what, and money kind of changes hands, and to the point where things are kind of becoming a little bit, again, hidden, and things are not very like clear in terms of the accounting. So let's see. So other events last week. I did make a prediction for US that on the 22nd through 24th of June, there may be increased focus on leaders and or famous persons and what they say, how they communicate, where they travel to, their trips perhaps, or the agreements that they might be negotiating, and again, potentially involving retail, communication, and or transportation projects. Some issue may be clarified. I didn't see necessarily, and again, it doesn't mean just because I didn't see it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I just didn't see any headlines that jumped at me that would involve like political leaders, for example, engaging in these kind of activities. But I did see that there were some news about two famous YouTubers with like 20 plus million of subscribers. Jenna Marbles had, I guess, preemptively, temporarily, I guess, either quit or put her channel on hold. And also apparently Shane Dawson had either canceled or is also temporarily suspended, I'm not sure. But basically these, even though they're not leaders necessarily, but we did have, and I think the news came out about the 28th of June, so a little bit later than those 2 days that I just mentioned, 22nd through the 24th. But we did have this kind of a prominent events involving prominent folks that had to do with basically what they were saying, or perhaps what they were not saying, and that resulted in this major news that, you know, was picked up and was, I guess, of significant nature. Let's see, then I also made a prediction that on 25th of June there might be some news about the reversal in earnings, or reversal in prediction, or if there was a report about some earnings that they might be reversed and a different number may be reported, a value of something may change, like a value of airplane tickets. I didn't necessarily, again, see headlines about that. There was a reversal in the market, where the market went up on the 25th and was down before and the day before and the day after. I guess it's a little bit of a far-fetched. Then there was also news, or rather prediction, about the June 25th through 26th, potentially seeing an important public announcement affecting large, or some development that affects large groups of people, and it could be some sort of a disaster like a flood or inclement weather, fire, poisoning, some other misfortune that particularly may negatively affect food industry, crops, restaurants, grocery stores, farms, anything to do with like growing or distributing food. And there was, interestingly, news on the 27th of June from India about like a huge swarm of desert locusts spreading like a 3-kilometer, I guess, in length, that invaded Gurgaon near New Delhi, and they also covered, I guess, large parts of Haryana. So I'm sure that that had affected crops and farming in that area. I did also see, of course, news in general. I guess that's not something that you need astrology to predict. There are multiple airlines announcing plans to gradually reopen, so I guess that's some sort of a reversal, like things were closed, now they're reopening. But again, this was kind of expected anyway. There was also news about Starbucks pausing their paid advertising on social media, and I'm not sure if that resulted necessarily immediately in the changes in their value, but that's just something that, again, an activity that was paused, rather that was ongoing and then paused. I'm not sure that, again, that disqualifies. And similarly, there was also news on the 26th of June from Texas, and I guess Florida, where they basically made a decision to, I guess, restrict bar and restaurant businesses due to the new spike of COVID-19 cases. And again, I'm sure that affected their value, but I was expecting of those businesses, but I was expecting things more along the lines of report coming out and clearly saying, okay, this is the value, and then maybe the next day or on the 25th, that would have been somehow corrected. Let's see. So that's pretty much it. I don't have any other notes for the previous week's predictions. And moving on to this week, in terms of this geopolitical kind of tension situation, seismic activity, the strongest time, I guess, time where this influence may be felt this week would be July 5th, and I guess continuing to early of next week as well. Then there's also another prediction that I have that is a standing prediction where it's going to be felt on-off all year, but the next period to look forward to, I guess, or to expect intensification would be August of this year, where there may be increased focus on governmental regulations, controls, embargoes, taxes, tariffs, various either shortages or delays, or start of reorganization of some structures, maybe some changes in leadership or restructuring at the level of the corporations or level of some governmental organizations. And some sort of shakeups may be occurring because, again, maybe literally a shakeup where there's an earthquake and some structures need to be rebuilt. Or perhaps because, again, there's a violence or anti-governmental protests or protests anti some large corporations, and therefore these entities need to restructure. Maybe some leaders need to go, or basically they need to come up with some sort of new way of functioning, and it leads to, again, to some sort of restructuring of the power structure in those either corporations or governmental leaders. And so again, this could be either corporate restructuring because they want to improve things. It could be anti-governmental or anti-corporate protests, and therefore some leader must go and some restructuring follows, and or there's a natural disaster, and therefore, again, things need to be rebuilt because of that kind of a shakeup. For US, the strongest sort of time that it may be felt would be around August 13th through 21st. And then also this will be significant for China, where they may feel such influence around August 9th through 17th. Then let's see, then as I mentioned, we have this ongoing influence that will be in place through about July 10th, and that picks up on November 4th through 20th, where there may be increased news about companies that either have to do with like nuclear power, radiation power plants, recycling plants, or underground activities, for example, mining or burials or waste storage, terrorist activities, religious activities, again, something that's like religious activities to the point of obsession over some rules and laws, except they come, from some higher power in the, at least that's what followers of that particular faith may believe, and or some activities that are hidden underground because they are illegal or fraudulent somehow. And so we may hear more about those kind of activities, similar to what we just saw with the Wirecard. And let's see, we also have this ongoing influence that will actually be in place both in 2020 and through pretty much the end of the 2021. But for the time being, the, again, critical time periods will be through about July 7th, and then picks up November 16th through the 12th, and that's significant for the US, where there may be increased focus on international activities, partnerships, negotiations, as well as there may be increased news about either like the end of cycle, bankruptcy, problems with taxes, concerns about debts, loans, or against spying, hacking, or some secretive manipulation, fraudulent activities, whistleblowing, and again, this may either affect companies that are actually associated with like hidden activities. Maybe it's actually like private investigation, or perhaps they're doing research and it's just a very like secretive research, or it could be, or trash recycling, etc., mining, for example, or it could be because, again, the company is not supposed to be doing things secretly, and they're hiding something that really should be transparent. And so the result may be that these companies, these businesses may end up, basically needing stricter governmental regulations to, impose stricter governmental controls, in particular on financial flows, real estate investments, and or food production, again, just to improve stability, security, stricter guidelines, and this may lead to some concerns about the reduced cash flow, changes in taxes, like maybe the taxes need to be raised, such as a sales tax, or concerns about insurance fraud, debt loans of these companies. And these could be, again, either these companies that deal with underground locations, engage in secretive activities, and or areas specifically related to retail sales, communication, and transportation. In terms of the coronavirus, the influence, especially for China, is still going to be in place till about December of this year, and in fact, a period of August through November of 2020 may see kind of even a stronger sort of not stronger news, but rather increased news about this topic. And again, for China, the two waves that I think still may be ahead of us, where this COVID-19 or related kind of news about either medical research, for example, or healthcare reform may increase. For China is July 6th through the 24th, and then October 26th through November 20th, and particularly the dates November 9 and through 13th are significant, which again overlaps with multiple other predictions about this period of November 9 through 13 being significant in many different ways. So I think there may be some sort of culmination of various activities happening right around like second week to mid-November, based on various just tense influences in the world. Let's see, in terms of oil prices, next period to look, I guess, towards to will be sometime the end of July 26th or 28th. There may be yet again increased focus on news on oil, gas, also of course chemicals, beverages, as well as maybe movies, etc., and even religious various events. But in terms of oil and gas, there may be increased concerns about either the sales, or perhaps there may be some, again, problems with communication, transportation, which of course could then reduce the sales, I guess, of gas, for example. And also this whole time period, especially July 27th, may be kind of a time of tensions in the stock market, and there may be a big drop on the 27th of July. And later after that, starting about November of 2020 into February of 2021, and especially the end of January 2021, again, we may be seeing this increase of sort of news about oil, gas, but also anything to do with chemicals, drugs, pharmaceuticals, water pollution, or some other important developments, some changes in the industry that affects oil, gas, chemicals. And at the same time, end of January, there may be some surprising and expected, shocking even developments related to earnings, finance, currencies, and banks, which may involve airlines, telecoms, and IT companies. So perhaps either service outages, sudden bankruptcies, companies may be splitting into multiple smaller entities, or again, massive power outages, for example. So all of the above basically seems like both related to oil, gas, communication, transportation, as well as these other companies, IT, telecoms, etc., as well as the fintech, I guess, as well, may see a spike in volatility and some sort of unexpected events related to these businesses. And that would be especially January 18th through 29th of 2021. And then even after that, in April, especially April 8th through 11th of 2021, there may be yet again renewed tensions and potentially down market, especially on April 8th and 9th. And in April, the tensions may be about like oil prices, maybe like OPEC members again will be negotiating what the prices should be, but basically there'll be some discontent about that, and probably prices going down as well as market going down April 8 and 9. In terms of the stock market direction for this week, I made a prediction for every day of the week market being down, especially intensifying towards the end of the week. I'm recording this actually on Monday, the end of the day on the 29th. I did post my prediction the day before on Sunday at Tolstunka.com, where's my that's my blog. And I did see that on Monday, actually, the market went up nicely, like over, I think, 1% NASDAQ and over 2% Dow Jones. So there was definitely some happy, optimistic buying, I guess. That said, that what I see is mainly tense aspects, so I do expect that overall the week will be down, and especially towards the end of the week. So for US, as I mentioned before, there's this background influence that started about the January of this week, January of this year, and it will continue initially through about the early October, and then we'll pick back up around mid-November and in about mid-February of next year. And this is a fairly strong kind of a influence that is again happening on-off, but will result most likely after everything is said and done by like February of next year in major changes related to businesses and communication, transportation, IT, retail, sales, education, religion, law enforcement related, such as judges and police, as well as just in terms of anything that's like involves various agreements and negotiations and partnerships. So there may be significant changes, including new laws, new ends, and rather new relationships may begin, like new partnerships or previous partnerships, previous deals, and like in international negotiations, there may be withdrawal from or entering new international organizations, death or removal of major leaders, changes in regulations, especially when it comes to international travel, shipments, tariffs, so this import-export regulations, or travel overseas kind of regulation. And there may also be this changes in sort of basically either massive expansion overseas or massive kind of reduction of outlet locations that again are specifically either overseas or involve perhaps products that come from overseas. And those changes will be on a massive scale, like I said, no stone left unturned, to the point where there may be a tendency to make a really sweeping change, like a sweeping reform, just close everything, or completely move, manufacturing from one place to another, or cancel, all the flights, or suddenly allow everybody to come, or prevent everybody from coming. I'm talking about maybe immigration or just shipments from particular locations. So really kind of this massive changes. And again, communication, transportation, retail sales, as well as education, religion, like churches, for example, and law enforcement, judges and police, indeed police reforms, but anything also to do with like laws, maybe how laws are written. There may be some really major changes, and this had started around January. This will be strongly felt this week, but will continue through about early October, and will pick back up in mid-November to then mid-February of next year. And as I said, there may be things that will kind of be overdone, where, the saying goes, throwing the baby with the bathwater. And companies that maybe do this now, they may actually either come to reverse things come November, or they may be a follow-up where they will have to adjust for things kind of going overboard now that may need to be adjusted later. So this again reminds me of Microsoft closing their retail locations, or it could be something similarly sweeping in scale. Then also June 30th through July 1st is an important period for businesses, products or projects related to communication, transportation, as well as IT, retail, sales, education, and again, agreements and negotiations. And this may be connected to like banks, real estate, farming, food production, grocery stores, as well as general issues of safety, security, and stability. So something like concerns, perhaps, do banks have enough money? How's the real estate doing? Or which real estate investments are safe? Is there enough food basically to go around? Are farmers able to like produce and sell their goods? Is population safe and protected by the government? Is traveling safe? Is shopping safe? Is food supply stable? So concerns of that nature. I did see today on Monday that there was some, in part the reason the market went up, I guess there was some focus on housing, I think, and then the real estate, I think, was actually doing better than expected. And so the market actually went up, but I think that June 30th through July 1st, there actually may be some either concerns or at least evaluation of what sort of investments, including in real estate, are safe, or which, like food supply, chain is stable and protected. So there may be some kind of concerns about that. Then for US, July 1st through 3rd seem to be important, and there may be increased news about earnings, profits, workforce, healthcare, social support, veterinary care, livestock, governmental services, and governmental contracts. So any sort of services that involve maybe like teachers or police or healthcare workers that again are specifically sponsored by like government or taxpayers, and or maybe postal service. There may be some, or any other really government sponsored sort of domains like services and support that are again taxpayer sponsored. There may be some increased news there, and there may be concerns, anger, or upsetting news about some domestic and about projects and issues. So maybe somebody's not paid enough, or maybe they're demanding better pay or better compensation, or there's some concerns about stability or security, maybe the food production or groceries or farming. Either something is threatened, or perhaps there's a food poisoning somewhere, or just concerns about stability of perhaps banks or about the real estate market, even though today we had positive news, but I think concerns may still be coming perhaps about the commercial real estate. And let's see, and so therefore I think Wednesday and Thursday especially, the market will more likely to be down on these concerns. And of course Friday is the holiday, markets are closed. Then just a quick glance ahead for July. Significant dates may be 20th through 21st, where there may be another large move in the market. I think it might be a drop, and that may be because of some stressful news about leadership or some prominent persons, some concerns about either corporate or governmental leaders, or possibly conflicts with international partners, and that's for the US. Then globally, July 26th through 29th will be important. I think I already mentioned that, with potentially a large drop on the 27th of July, and there will be increased focus on all of these Neptunian topics. Of course, oil, gas, chemicals, beverages, poisons, navy, water pollution, and or even healthcare news. And there might be some news about some drastic changes in the prices of various medicines. Maybe some medicines, price skyrockets or falls dramatically, or some news about, maybe trials of some vaccine or some drug maybe, again, may come up that are quite significant and become, drive some stock to really fall or go up, for example. And there may also be important news about some prominent religious figure or an actor and their finance. So perhaps the person has donated too much or too little, or overspent on something that maybe they, public perceive that they shouldn't have, or mishandle the money. And let's see, that's end of July. And then also for US, July 27th through 30th actually may see positive news about, like say, additional funding or increased value, or some beneficial developments in the areas related to sports, racing, engines, military, like fighting, especially those kind of sports that involve this action, macho kind of activities, and also stock market, entertainment industry, and casinos. So perhaps again, these areas may receive additional funding, or some permission is granted for them to do their business in some way that is beneficial to them. And finally, also for US, July 28th and 31st, yet again, end of July, there may be increased focus, and that's not just globally, but now also specifically for US, on focus on oil, gas, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, beverages, navy, marine life, water pollution, etc., as well as real estate, food production, and homeland security. So at that time, there may be some concerns about loss of value, excessive prices, or perhaps decreased earnings. So I would say in terms of oil, both international and for US, oil, gas, chemical kind of industries, as well as even healthcare, there may be some increased developments with potentially both market going down at the end of July, and also the value of related products, services, I guess, and companies also going down. So that wraps it up for me, and I hope that this was interesting, exciting, informative, and you had enjoyed this edition. And we'll come back next week to watch some more of these videos. And until then, have a great week, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye!